Dangers and drawbacks of sense pleasure. What is karma? As indicated in the quotation above, the term karma has two definitions. Karma spelt K-A-M-A. First, it can mean desire, affection, lust, or yearning. Second, it can mean object of desire, object of affection, object of lust, object of yearning, object of gratification, something that stimulates pleasure, something that provides comfort. This second definition refers to any person, living being, material, wealth, personal belonging, etc., which people possess or hold on to in order to derive pleasure. In sum, these objects are classified as the five strands of sensuality, kama guna: sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and tangibles that are desirable, that provide sense pleasure, kama sukha. Sense pleasure is dependent on the five senses and dependent on material things. It can also be referred to as carnal pleasure or material happiness, sa misa sukha or misa sukha. There are many kinds and degrees of sense pleasure, including exalted and divine kinds of pleasure, all of which are recognized as forms of happiness. Here we shall focus on the flaws of sense pleasure and the advantages of supreme happiness. We may ask why those people who have experienced more refined happiness claim that it is superior to sense pleasure, and even relinquish sense pleasure altogether. The dangers and drawbacks of karma. Here, both definitions of this term are combined, i.e., desire and objects of desire can be looked at from three angles: in relation to an individual, in relation to karma itself, and in relation to the social behavior of people indulging in sensuality. In terms of the individual, one can witness how people, through an improper relationship to sense objects, create suffering within themselves. By behaving incorrectly and in relation to the world around them, they create objects of desire and make themselves miserable. In terms of karma itself, one can discern the laws of those things sought after by people, and one can discern the flaws inherent in the enjoyment and gratification derived from these things. In terms of karma itself, one can discern the flaws of those things sought after by people, and one can discern the flaws inherent in the enjoyment and gratification derived from these things. In terms of people's behavior, one can see how those people who seek out and indulge in sense pleasure act in relation to society. Note that although these three aspects can be distinguished, they are in fact interconnected. 1. The individual. Here the focus is on the process of creating suffering in line with dependent origination, paticca samuppada. This begins with cognition of various sense objects, followed by an erroneous mental attitude towards these things. A person continually allows the stream of events to follow the path of ignorance, craving until this process becomes habitual. One can call this a habitual predilection for suffering, or a propensity for causing problems. The Buddha mentioned this process in his description of human development, beginning with conception in the womb until a person grows up as an adult. A part of this development was quoted above. Here we continue this description. When that child grows up, his faculties mature still further. He enjoys himself provided and endowed with the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. On seeing a form with the eye, he lusts after it. If it is pleasing, he dislikes it if it is displeasing. On hearing a sound, on smelling an odor, on tasting a flavor, on touching a tangible object, on cognizing a mind object, he lusts after it. If it is pleasing, he dislikes it if it is displeasing. He abides with mindfulness of body, unestablished with a limited mind. He does not understand as it actually is the deliverance of mind, and deliverance by wisdom, wherein those evil, unwholesome states already arisen cease without remainder. Engaged as he is in pleasure and aversion, whatever feeling he feels, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, he is engrossed in that feeling, devoted to it, and preoccupied by it. As he does so, delight, nandi, craving, arises in him. Now delight in feelings transforms into clinging. With this clinging as condition there is becoming. With becoming as condition, birth. With birth as condition, aging and death. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair all come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. 2. Kamma itself. Here one focuses on the flaws of sense desire, and on the objects of sense desire. The Buddha frequently used the following analogies to demonstrate how karma provides relatively little satisfaction. Instead, it creates much affliction and danger. A. Sense desire is similar to an exhausted and starving dog who is thrown a bone covered with blood. It will gnaw on the bone until it's tired and weak, without real satisfaction or fulfillment. B. Sense desire is similar to a vulture or hawk with a piece of meat in its mouth. Other raptors will swoop down as a mob and snatch the meat away. People have no absolute ownership over material things. Others can snatch them away. Many different people desire the same object, giving rise to rivalry, conflict, oppression, and even killing. If one does not know how to relate responsibly towards sense objects, one will experience distress and torment. C. Sense desire is similar to a person holding a flaming grass torch and walking upwind. Before long he will have to throw the torch down, or else his hands, arms and body will be burned, leading to severe injuries or even death. D. Sense desire is similar to a blazing pit of coals. Someone who cherishes his life knows that if he falls in, he will die or be severely injured. He does not want to fall in, but a strong man grabs him by the arms and gradually drags him towards the pit. E. Sense objects are similar to a radiant and beautiful dream. Before long the images fade and disappear. Upon waking one sees nothing and is left with a feeling of anguish. F. Sense objects are similar to borrowed possessions, which a person shows off in order to appear fancy and smart. Other people will admire them, but one will only be able to possess them temporarily and with a sense of doubt. One has no true ownership over them. Whenever the true owner, i.e. nature, asks for them back, one must return them. There is no compromise. All that a person is left with is his or her body and mind, which is constantly subject to rising and passing away. G. Sense objects are similar to a tree at the edge of the forest bearing abundant fruit. Those people who pass by and desire the fruit will use whatever means at their disposal to acquire it. Those who are able will climb the tree to gather the fruit, while those who cannot will use other means. If they are foolish or evil-minded, they will cut the entire tree down. If those people up in the tree do not get down in time, the tree will fall on them, leading to injury or even death. H. Sense objects are similar to a chopping block. Meddling with them is tantamount to risking losing one's life by being chopped or slashed. Sense objects are similar to a spear or lance. They tend to stab and pierce, wounding one and causing injury. J. Sense objects are similar to the head of a snake. If one is exposed to it, one must always live in distrust. One is unable to truly feel secure or be at ease. The snake can strive at any time, placing one in a constant state of danger. The disadvantages or flaws of karma can be summarized as follows. Objects of sense pleasure are only able to provide a desirable sweetness, delectability and enjoyment for the short duration that one is experiencing them. These objects, when they are related to incorrectly, end up inflicting acute pain and distress for a long time. Moreover, the fading and passing away of the enjoyment may cause sadness and torment, leading to long-standing grief. 3. Social behavior. Here an examination of the disadvantages of sense desire begins with the suffering, hardship and adversity inherent in earning a livelihood and seeking material objects to use and consume. Everyone must endure the hardships of climate and of physical and mental fatigue in earning a living. Some people are so impoverished that they lose their lives in the search for material things. Other people make great effort in their work, struggling with obstacles and exhaustion, but are unsuccessful. They make no money or they go bankrupt, resulting in grief and anguish. Even when one obtains such things, there is suffering in trying to protect them. Some people experience such misfortunes as having their possessions stolen by thieves or incinerated by fire, causing them additional distress. When ignorant people obtain material possessions, they get enslaved by them. Proud of their possessions, which are ultimately illusory and have no inherent lasting existence, they look down on others, thus increasing the woes of society. Some people are jealous of other people's possessions, leading to disputes, competition, and various forms of oppression. This interpersonal conflict is illustrated in this passage from the Pali Canon. Kings dispute with kings, nobles dispute with nobles, Brahmins dispute with Brahmins, merchants dispute with merchants, mothers dispute with their children, children dispute with their mothers, fathers dispute with their children, children dispute with their fathers, brothers dispute with their brothers, sisters dispute with their brothers, brothers dispute with their sisters, friends dispute with friends. This conflict can spill out into physical fighting and even murder. Spurred on by various personal interests and fueled by sense desire, people take up arms and engage in war, shooting, stabbing, and bombing one another. Likewise, they engage in various forms of immoral behavior like theft, burglary, adultery, and rape. When they are caught, they receive various kinds of punishments. When they die, they must experience further torment in plains of misery, bad destinations, lower worlds, and hell. All of these actions and results are due to sense desire. Those who discern the aforementioned disadvantages and dangers of sense desire, karma, and who have experienced a superior kind of happiness to the point of no longer hankering after objects of sensual enjoyment, also see into the true nature of sense pleasure, kama sukha. The Buddha explained this matter by using another analogy as follows. Imagine a person with leprosy whose body is deeply infected by the disease and covered by lesions. He uses his fingernails to scratch at the scabs, and for relief he burns his flesh over a charcoal pit. At a later time, a doctor cures him of this illness, enabling him to live at ease and to move about as he wishes. He sees other people suffering from leprosy who scratch their wounds, cauterize their flesh, and take medicine for their illness. But he feels no delight or gladness in respect to these people. This is similar to those who formerly indulged in objects of sense pleasure. When they later abandon craving for sense pleasure and experience an internal peace and happiness that is independent of sensuality and superior even to divine pleasures, they feel no delight or hankering when they see others indulging in sense pleasures. If a strong person were to grab someone who has recovered from leprosy and drag him towards a fire pit, he would struggle to escape because of the heat of the fire. The contact with the fire is now considered painful, whereas formerly, when he had leprosy, he would seek out the same hot fire voluntarily to grill his flesh, and he considered the contact pleasurable. This is because a person afflicted with leprosy has damaged faculties, leading to inverted or perverse perceptions, sanya viparita, in regard to fire, experiencing pain as pleasure. So too it is with sensuality. In truth, all forms of sensuality entail painful contact and are marked by burning and agitation. People are ordinarily infected by craving for sensuality, however, and possess damaged and faulty faculties, giving rise to warped perceptions in regard to sensuality, experiencing the actual pain as pleasure. The moral leper scratches and burns his lesions, the dirtier and more putrid they become. His happiness and delight stems from scratching his wounds, or exists at the point of the wound that is being scratched. As long as he is not cured from this itch, he will be unable to know a superior kind of happiness. He will be caught up in scratching. How can one introduce him to a happiness that does not involve scratching the itch? But when he is cured of this illness and is healthy, he will be able to know a superior form of happiness, and from then on he will not desire the pleasure derived by scratching an itch. The same is true in respect to sense pleasure. When those people marred by craving for sensuality experiences the sense pleasure, the craving intensifies. Moreover, their happiness and delight is derived from and limited to the five objects of sense pleasure. If they are still not cured from the infection and inflammation of craving for sensuality, it will not be possible for them to know a superior, more refined kind of happiness. In this agitated state, how can one get them to experience an internal happiness, independent of external sense objects? But when craving for sensuality no longer gnaws away at them, and they are freed from the provocations of sense desire, they will be able to experience a sublime internal happiness. This is referred to as a freedom from disease, an absence of mental disturbance, perfect mental health, which is one of the definitions for Nibbana. In the Sakya Sutta, the Buddha converses with a group of Sakyan householders. After being questioned, the Sakyan householders acknowledge that someone who makes his living righteously and abstains from anything unwholesome, and who as a result earns half a coin, a single coin, 2 coins, all the way up to 500 coins per day, is worthy to be called an enterprising person. Yet even if such an enterprising person were to save up his earnings for 100 years, amassing a large quantity of wealth, this wealth would not be able to provide him with pure, uninterrupted happiness for a single day, or even half a day. This is because objects of sense pleasure are impermanent, insubstantial, without any lasting reality, subject to disappearance and decay. This differs from those who practice according to the Buddha's teachings and who attain the fruit, enabling them to abide in pure, unadulterated happiness for long periods of time.